Everyone, good afternoon and welcome to NAAEE's monthly webinar series, and this is a special one because we're doing it in partnership with the Children in Nature Network. My name is Judy Browse and I'm the Executive Director of the North American Association for Environmental Education, and we are so thrilled that you could join us for this webinar. And we were talking about how we have a number of speakers on today, so don't panic. Everybody will fit in the time allotted, but it's going to be a really wonderful lineup. And what we're doing today, hopefully you will not be checking on watching kittens on YouTube. We'll be talking about research, all about research. And I want to thank our co-hosts, our affiliate co-hosts, for working with us on this webinar series, and to all of our affiliates out there, thank you for joining. We're really happy you could be with us today, and we're really happy to be doing this in partnership so more people can learn and grow with us on our webinar series. And what we try to do every month is present topics that we think are of interest to the broad community, those of you working in formal, non-formal, leading different efforts. We like to highlight the work of our partners like we're doing today, showcasing leaders and helping us all think differently about the field and learn new things. Before we dig in, I wanted to just briefly explain how to use Zoom, because you're all muted and we still want to hear from you, and that's the chat box. So you can type questions in, you can type questions to everyone, or you can type questions to one particular speaker or all the panelists. You just look at the drop-down menu. And for our panelists, if you'll mute yourself when you're not talking, just so we don't get feedback, that would be fantastic. And again, please type questions along the way. We'll answer as many as we can during the session, but whatever we don't answer, we'll answer later and post it on EE Pro. And you're also welcome to post links or make comments as well that you think will be helpful to everybody, because so many people on this on the webinar list here that I see, so many names there. You are doing so much in this area of linking research and practice. If anybody is having any technical problems, please feel free to email Kristen or Cy. We're so lucky to have them both on. Kristen is our research and program manager, and Cy is our communications specialist, and they are here to help with any technical issues, and you'll be hearing from Kristen later on. So this is our incredible lineup today. I'm so excited to have this group on a webinar at the same time. And if you don't know everyone here, I really encourage you to look up their bios. We're not going to go into deep introductions because of timing, but it's truly an honor to have this impressive group on the webinar at the same time. So you're going to get a chance to hear from everybody. And today we're going to highlight the new research library that we've launched in partnership with the Children in Nature Network. It's a wonderful partnership between NAAEE and the Children in Nature Network to try and bring research to everyone. And it is only made possible with support from the Pisces Foundation and EPA through EE360. And it has allowed us to combine the good work of two organizations and create one site where practitioners and researchers and funders can find summaries of research of what is out there. They can also find syntheses that is trying to make sense of the research, and actually in some cases linking to the actual article if we have access. So our overall goal was to make research more accessible and promote the work of CNN and NAAEE. And we know that many practitioners and others in the field just don't have the time or access to dig into the research, and new articles are being published every day. So we wanted to create this kind of watering hole for research and connect the work of what NAAEE is doing and the Children in Nature Network are doing on research. So on behalf of NAAEE, we want to thank everyone who's made this possible, and special thanks to our colleagues at the Children in Nature Network. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of the Children in Nature Network, Sarah.
Thanks, Judy, and good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to see folks from all over North America. And shout out to the Canadians, and thanks for joining us here this afternoon for this great conversation. And I just would like to share a few things to follow up on and reinforce what Judy said. This collection is really a direct response to what we've heard from folks like you, practitioners, service providers, funders, who've told us that they want a simple, easy to use, one-stop source to find the most up-to-date research so that you can make the case for your work, improve practice, and make investment decisions based upon the best science available. So the Children in Nature Network and NAAEE are thrilled to have had the opportunity to join forces to create this new tool that provides the research resources, as Judy said, of both organizations in one spot. And we do hope that you'll take the time to explore the site and let us know what you think. Your feedback is going to be very critical in making this library as useful as possible. So if you aren't finding what you're looking for or things aren't working, please let us know. And of course, we'd love to hear from you if it's meeting your needs and helping you in tremendous ways. We'd love to hear that too. I'd like to say thanks again to the Pisces Foundation for helping to make this a reality, and to all of our colleagues and folks at the EPA who helped us create this tool that you'll get to see today. This has definitely been a team effort. So now I'd like to turn it over to Jason Morris, who is the Senior Program Officer for Environmental Education with the Pisces Foundation, to share some thoughts on why they invested in this resource. Take it away, Jason.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Judy, and hello, everybody from beautiful downtown San Francisco. We're just so thrilled about this partnership and this research database, and we've heard from so many of you about how desperate this has been needed. It took a while to come together, all being said and done, maybe a year and a half, and the end product is just wonderful. We're so proud of this grant. We're really proud of the collaboration between the Children in Nature Network and NAAEE, and we're most proud to make the research more accessible to all of you for the great work that you're doing. So thank you so much, and we're really excited about this webinar.
Thank you, Jason. We're so excited that you were able to join us today, and really thanks for your cheerleading. It's been fantastic. And now we want to get into the nitty-gritty. How do you use this great resource? And I'm so excited to introduce Bill Finnegan, who's going to do a quick demo using screenshots of the website. And I got to tell you that Bill is just a genius with all things related to websites, videos, environmental education, and so much more. And he worked seamlessly with the Children in Nature Network technical team to be able to actually build this. So Bill, thank you for being here, and thank you for all the work that you've done.
Great, thanks Judy, and thanks everyone else. And as you can see on the screen right now, there's the link you can use to get to the research library. And so I'm just going to kind of briefly orient you all to the content in the library and also the easiest way to kind of search through it and find things. But if you want to follow along, go ahead and load that up, and you can be looking at it while we're talking. And I'm just using screen grabs rather than the live site, just because with the webinar, it's a little bit safer that way. But as you load up the site, just to mention again, as Judy mentioned, eeRESEARCH brings together hundreds of research summaries. These were written for environmental education practitioners, and they're now in this searchable online library. The articles that are summarized have all been published in peer-reviewed journals, and they reflect over a decade of scholarship in environmental education. The primary sources for these summaries are the Children in Nature Network Research Library, which has been mentioned, the Environmental Education Research Bulletin series from Stanford, NAAEE, and Change Scale, which many of you are probably familiar with, as well as a new series of summaries which have been written by a team at Duke to fill any gaps we identified. All of these summaries have been systematically and consistently categorized using a taxonomy developed based on categories that Pisces and other foundations have been using in their grant making. So the result is over 1,000 searchable summaries connecting the dots between research and practice. And this is a growing number. Constantly, new ones are coming through from the Children in Nature Network. EERB has another issue coming out soon. Those will be loaded into this. And then a new batch of summaries from the team at Duke will also be loaded in very soon. We also have made the full text of research articles available when possible, but right now that's only about 20 open access articles. We do hope this increases over time, but of course there's different issues in terms of rights when it comes to the full access of an article. So Judy, if you can go to the next slide. So on the main page for eeRESEARCH, at the top of the page, there's a little bit of information about the partnership, a link to learn more, buttons for feedback. Again, we do want to hear feedback, any issues or any other feedback. There's a video tutorial which goes into more depth, so I'll give you kind of the 2-minute version. That's a longer version of how to navigate the system. And then you can see links to these main category pages. I'll come back to those in a second. And then the search form and the most recent additions to the library. Judy, if you go to the next slide. So if we zoom in on a teaser for a single summary, you can see the title of the article, a 1-line kind of headline of summary, the full citation, links to the DOI and Google Scholar. So again, that's another way to kind of follow a thread of research in terms of related articles, or more information, or occasionally full text if you can find it through those ways. And then BibTeX is a download if you want to bring this into your citation management software. And then at the bottom, there's info about the source of the summary, categorization, icons using these categories, and then an indication of if there is a summary or full text available. So for the next slide, it just shows you, again, the search interface. So the simple search interface there is really oriented around keyword search. So, whatever you happen to be looking for, you can just type in freeform keyword and that'll query different elements of the research article or the summary. But you can also tag here, if you want to make sure a summary is available or full text is available. There are some citations in the system that don't have summaries because they might relate to another research-oriented program like eeWorks, but the vast majority of things in the library have been summarized. So in this case, that was the searching for evaluation and again, full text available, and it brought up a couple results. And so, yeah, and if we click through and we look at one of these actual summaries, so click through the title of it or the summary icon, it takes you to the summary page. And then once you're there, you can read the full summary. Again, that came from these other sources. If you go to the next part, we'll just kind of scroll down this page, actually go back one. You can see on the right sidebar, there's a box for other articles from the same author, and then there's also a box of related articles based on the tagging, and you can even see kind of the similarity rating based on how many tags they share. And then if you go to the next page, we'll get to the bottom, and you can see the categories for which this has been tagged, and click through to see a list of articles in that specific category, the citation information, and then a little bit of interaction at the bottom in terms of being able to like, share, or comment, depending on if you're logged into the site. So if we go, to the next, there we are. So this is back on the search page. There are more options. So if you kind of do that little toggle reveal for more search options, you can use any of these filters related to, again, the categories, but also information about the article in terms of the journal, the source of the summary, author, other tagging around, age, etc. So this is another means of quickly filtering the results and seeing it. And actually, if you go to the next page, you can see this is now on the advanced search page. So there's a link to the advanced search, and one of the big differences in the advanced search page is that you can actually select multiple terms within a topic. So in this case, under age, I could select a few of these different age categories. And so, again, in an advanced search, you might decide to use the education categorization, limit for formal learning settings. Then in age, you could select both middle childhood and adolescence. And then you can also, in the year, you could select a year range from 2015 onwards. I did that specific search and it resulted in 79 results. And so that, that is just a sign of how you can use this. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to explain a little bit of the search logic without getting too detailed. When you are doing different categories, so again, if I'm doing formal learning settings and middle childhood, it takes the intersection of them. So it's refining your search. However, if within a particular category, you choose more than one option, it expands it within that category. So if I do early childhood and middle childhood, it's not doing the intersection of those because that doesn't quite make sense. It's expanding it so that I have a broader age range and then how that intersects with these other terms. The next slide, the one last thing I just wanted to share is if you go back to the main landing page, and again, this doesn't show the landing page, it shows the next step, but if you're in the back of the main landing page, you have those categories that we mentioned before. And again, you could have read them, but just to reiterate them, it's education, conservation, health, social justice, and human development. And again, these are, it's a taxonomy we developed, starting with those high-level things and then breaking it down into subcategories. And this was building on what Pisces and other funders were using to categorize their grant making. Each of these higher level categories has a page where you can get a little more information about, well, what do we mean when we're talking about social justice as it relates to environmental education research? And then within this, you can then refine and filter more articles using those terms. So it's another pathway to the research, is to actually kind of drill down into one of these categories. So that's the brief introduction. And again, there's more information there. If there's another video tutorial, and of course, part of the reason we're having this webinar is if anybody has any particular questions or they've gotten stuck on anything, we're here to help.
Bill, thank you so much for that quick overview. And I know it's hard if you haven't used this to kind of absorb it all at once, but we are here to help you. And I do recommend that tutorial. It goes into a lot of depth. And please, as we hear from our next two speakers who are going to talk about using this site and why they think it's valuable, we'll be looking at questions. So if you have questions, please type them in the chat. So now we've got two amazing leaders in the field who are going to talk about the research library and why they think it's going to help the field. And first, I'm going to go to Louise Chawla. And I'm so excited that Louise is here because she doesn't really need an introduction since probably half the library is full of her articles. But she has helped all of us over the years really understand the research and help link it to practice. So thank you for being here, Louise, and we'd love to hear from you.
Okay. When I started research on children and their environments in the late 1970s, it was easy to keep up with the field. They're just pretty much knew who was doing that work, and I could keep on top of it. And from the beginning, I was interested in both children's city environments and how that worked for them, how they experienced that, and also their connections with the natural world, which I always saw as inclusive of each other because we want to have nature in cities. And you know, as the years went on, it took a lot more investment of time of doing searches, trying to keep on top of things. And at this point, the field is just so big, so bursting with activity, which is a wonderful thing. But at the same time, there's no way I could keep on top of everything interesting out there that is going on in the research field without this resource. And since NAAEE and Children in Nature Network have joined together, I used to go to the two separate sites, and now it's all there at one stop. People write to me from all over the world with questions about different research fields related to children and the environment, and I just tell them, you know, this is where you go, and it's there. And then now we also have the whole field of research on children's exposure to nature and their health and well-being. And the other thing I love about this resource is that it's so inclusive. I mean, it really thinks in a very broad way about what is important to us as researchers and as practitioners related to children and their environments. You're obviously investing a lot on your side to be keeping on top of these different fields because there's just so much going on there on the environmental education side, on the children and nature side, on the connection with nature and health and well-being. I mean, all of these fields are bursting open in a way that's really wonderful, but as I said, really impossible to stay on top of now without this resource. So I could not do my work without it. I was just browsing it before this webinar, and it was like, oh, I want to read this, I want to read that, and newest things that have just come out in most recent and that I see on there. And I think it's just kind of, from all over the world now, we have access to this synthesis, and I think it's awesome. And everybody, go to it if you haven't already.
Thank you, Louise. That means so much to everybody that's been involved in putting this together. And we do want to hear from you if you get stuck on something or you have ideas. And I can see there's a couple of questions in the chat room, and we'll address those throughout the program here. And then I'd like to turn it over also to Cathy Yoon. Cathy Yoon, I think you're on. And Cathy Yoon is the principal evaluator at the Seattle Aquarium, has been involved in environmental education for many, many years, and thinks of herself as a wildlife conservation professional focused on human dimensions of conservation, including environmental education and pro-environmental behavior. So Cathy Yoon, take it away.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, just took a sip of water and went down the wrong pipe. So I was super excited about this. It's amazing to see how it's all come about also after being part of some of the initial conversations and then kind of ghosting into the background and coming back and seeing what an amazing thing this has become. For me, working at an aquarium, we don't have access to a lot of peer-reviewed journals. And I have a faculty appointment, but even then, it's difficult to try and get, we don't have access to eeRESEARCH or JEE. And so I'm constantly trying to shimmy together some of my resources to find the articles that I need. And that's not even to speak for the staff I work with who may not have any of those opportunities. And so having this has been fantastic for just at least getting quick snapshots into what's out there and then being able to see what's really accessible and applicable to our work. Also, not being in an academic space, it's challenging sometimes to carve out time to read full papers. And so this has been a really nice way to have some of those summaries so that I can see what I really need to dive more deeply into versus what I can get out of these very thorough and awesome summaries that exist on the website. So I'm excited to see how this continues to grow, and in the ways in which we in the practical zone of things can continue to contribute research and input into this resource. We've been, I recently posted it to our staff group and been asking people to give feedback as they will on the usability of it. And so far, I think it's very user friendly and very easy to navigate, even if you're just logging on for the first time.
Cathy Yoon, thank you so much. It's nice to hear that, at the aquarium and the work that you do, that this is useful. And Louise, as a researcher, writer, thinker, all of you, that the both of you use this and you feel like it's going to be a valuable asset to the field. So thank you for just
absolutely
your thoughts. Really appreciate that. And again, if you have questions, please type them into the chat room. We did have one from Mike asking about a specific journal, and the list of journal dropdown is based on what the articles are in the database, but I think Bill is checking to see about Science News, Mike. And we have had conversations with Informal Science about linking up and potentially other partners, so we can talk more about that later. So if you have any questions on the research library, feel free to type them into the chat room. Now we're going to take a look at some of the ways that NAAEE and the Children in Nature Network are other ways that we're looking at linking research and practice, and just spend a little bit of time talking about some of the other things that we're doing. Because again, we are both, as organizations, trying to make this research available, not just to practitioners, but to other researchers, as we've heard, to funders, to policymakers, and trying to do things that help move all of us forward. And so first, I'm going to turn this over to Charlotte Clark, who is a professor at Duke and our board chair at NAAEE. We are so lucky to have her. But she's not only our board chair and a professor at Duke, she's been very active in the research symposium and the conference from NAAEE, and is going to say a few words about the research symposium, which will be coming up in October. So Charlotte, take it away. And make sure you're not on mute.
Yes, I am now unmuted. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks to everybody who's helped organize it, and thanks also to Pisces. I absolutely find my professional home and more than that, a home of friends every year when I go to the NAAEE conference And when I was a grad student, the research symposium was where I found my academic family, and I wouldn't miss it for anything. I am very excited this year for our annual research symposium on October 9th and 10th. There's going to be a lot of exciting things happening, some time in the out of doors, some time inside with each other, formal time that's structured, and lots of informal time so that the networking can happen in a very inclusive and engaging way. One of the things I love about the research symposium is how many times I go and someone says, I want to work on X. Does anyone else want to work on X? I want to think about a book in this way. Would anyone like to think about writing a chapter? It's a very inclusive and warm group of academics. So I encourage everyone to come.
And I see a number of people on this list that have been to the conference, so many of our friends. So we hope to see you in October in Spokane, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But thanks, Charlotte, for all you do. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kristen Kunkel, who again is our research and program manager, and she's going to highlight a few other initiatives that we're working on, including eeWorks, which is a partnership with Stanford and the University of Florida and a bunch of other partners. So Kristen, take it away.
Thanks, Judy. So as Judy mentioned, the eeWorks project, which was once known as the Anecdotes to Evidence project, is a collaborative effort to use inspiring stories and empirical research to demonstrate the impact of environmental education. And the goal of this project is to systematically collect and synthesize all of the high-quality studies that explore key topics in environmental education, so we can draw broad conclusions about how and why EE works. And the end goal of this effort is to produce a suite of research reviews and messaging guides that help practitioners and other people in the field understand and talk about the benefits and impact of EE. Next slide, please, Judy. And also, as Judy mentioned, the eeWorks project is a product of a lot of long-term and collaborative thinking among many, many partners, advisors, and supporters, lots of which are participating on this webinar today, so thank you again for that. It was developed based on a handful of ongoing research to practice efforts happening across the field for years, as well as recommendations that we received from sponsors and supporters of EE. And this project was spearheaded by NAAEE and Nicole Ardwin at Stanford University, along with many other partners and supporters. And so to do this project, there are several phases. Each topic that we pick with our partners and advisors begins with a systematic review of research. A research team at one of our partner universities identifies criteria for selecting studies that are included in the review based on quality and relevance. And then they collect and summarize all of the empirical evidence that fits that criteria to summarize trends across the research. And the list on this slide represents the topics that we have either completed or are in the works right now, ranging from the benefits of EE for K-12 students to how EE contributes to conservation, community resilience, and more. And as each review is completed, we consult with communications experts to translate the findings into key messages about how EE works to achieve each goal. We also include tips for communicating about the benefits of EE with target audiences like K-12 teachers, funders, decision makers, etc. And the goal in developing these tools is to share the stories that have for so long inspired people to believe in and support environmental education, and to back those stories up with reliable facts and data. So finally, we build web pages to showcase each review and the accompanying messaging tools. You can access links to each published research review. You can search all the articles included in each review, and you can download PDFs of all the messaging tools from the URL that's on the screen right now. We have also given a webinar last year with more details on the findings that we have received to date. If you want to check that out, it is archived on the learning section of EE Pro, which I will talk a bit about in a little bit. We'll cover that a little bit more. Next slide, please. Yep. Yeah. And so Bill mentioned this project earlier. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. The Environmental Education Research Bulletins, or otherwise known as the eeRBs, is a collaborative project with NAAEE, Change Scale, and Stanford University. And the research bulletins are designed to link research and practice for the field by synthesizing and summarizing recently reported research from journals focused on relevant topics to the profession. The bulletins include articles related to program evaluation, sense of place, environmental behavior, teaching practices, professional development, anything and everything that has been recently published in the EE literature. We currently have 10 issues available on EE Pro right now, and 11th is dangerously close to being published, so please keep an eye out for that. And finally, one other great place to find more resources related to our own research initiatives and others across the field is the Research and Evaluation group on EE Pro. Many of you are probably familiar with EE Pro, but if you aren't, it is our online platform for environmental education and professional development. Beyond finding and sharing resources and opportunities on EE Pro, we also host special interest groups that users can join to network and collaborate with people who are interested in a certain topic. Group moderators post new content to the group each month, and they help to facilitate the discussion boards and share new resources and research. So anyone can join EE Pro groups by creating a free profile on NAAEE.org. So it's a great platform for learning and networking with professionals interested in EE research around the world, working in different roles and in different capacities. So that's just a quick snapshot of some of the research initiatives going on here at NAAEE. And I will pass it back to Judy to introduce our CNN research team.
Thanks, Kristen. And Cy just posted links to EE Works and to the research bulletins. We just released one. And please sign up for EE Pro. It's free, it's easy, and you can join a group and dig in more. And our leaders for the research and evaluation discussion group are Nicole Ardwin and Alan Reed. And it's just a lot of great discussion and posting and all kinds of things related to both research and evaluation. And one other thing that we have in the works is an online module coming up on research and evaluation to join our online modules. So be on the lookout for that. And Bill is working hard on that right now. So now it does give me great pleasure. And thank you, Charlotte and Kristen, for talking about NAAEE's work. I'd like to turn it over to Cathy Jordan, who is she'll be talking about the research initiatives that the Children in Nature Network are doing. She is the research director for Children in Nature Network and associate professor of pediatrics and extension specialist at the University of Minnesota. And she oversees Children in Nature Network's research library, the Research Digest, and making the case webinar series. And we're happy to work with them on she serves as the PI of the NSF-funded The Science of Nature-Based Learning Collaborative Research Network. Yes, that is a mouthful. So Cathy, welcome.
Thanks, Judy. Well, it's a pleasure to be here to tell you a little bit more about CNNN's research-related activities. So CNN has been summarizing research related to the need. That skipped ahead just a second here. Okay, so CNN has been summarizing research related to the need for and the outcomes of connecting kids to nature and issues around best practice and equitable access for about 10 or 11 years. We invested in making CNN a really serious hub for the evidence in about 2014 by creating a formal infrastructure around research in terms of a personnel staff and online mechanisms, and developing several tools and mechanisms for activating the evidence. The research library is, CNNN's research library is the anchor for all of that. The research library currently houses over 700 lay summaries of the peer-reviewed literature at the moment, and we're adding about 20 new summaries per month. We do that by scanning the literature monthly. We do that through 3 search engines and getting alerts and scanning tables of contents of about 40 different journals. And we coordinate with the NAAEE staff to avoid duplication where we might overlap on specifically environmental education journals. Our scope includes a variety of kinds of nature engagement, from just green neighborhoods and tree canopy to things like outdoor adventure and recreation, therapeutic uses, technological nature, recreation, school-related nature activities, stewardship activities, etc. We're focused on a variety of outcomes, from physical health and mental health and sort of social emotional function school-related academic function, general developmental variables like cognition and motor function, all the way through community-level outcomes, in addition to conservation-related, nature utilization, and we have a focus on equity and social justice. There we go. Okay, so the content of our research library is uploaded regularly to eeRESEARCH, the joint database. All of CNNN's collection is therefore accessible through eeRESEARCH using the strategies that Bill talked about earlier in terms of searching. It's also available through CNNN's website using a different way of searching. So you can search by sample characteristic, such as age or special needs population, such as emotional and behavioral disordered or learning disabled, or immigrant children, for example. You can also search for different kinds of studies, perhaps experimental studies that might speak to causality, or longitudinal studies that might speak to delayed or sustained impact of nature. You can also search on barriers that might complicate connecting kids to nature. We've focused most heavily on searching by outcome. So under the broad headings, things like physical health and physical health risks, mental health, etc., you can really drill down into some very specific subtags. So just as an example, I've expanded the physical health benefits and the academic function, and you can see that you can get quite specific within those general categories. So the research library offers summaries of individual articles. We also wanted to find ways to provide some useful syntheses across studies. We produced brief bullet point level and hopefully pleasing to the eye infographics. The information presented in these was the most up-to-date research-based information when these were developed about 2 years ago. The messages presented in these infographics were evaluated and approved by our Scientific Advisory Council, and then the translation of those messages into these graphic elements and the text that you see here, these sound bites, was also approved by our Scientific Advisory Council. The content of the 6 infographics include 4 that are focused on green schoolyards. 2 of them here are academic outcomes and mental health benefits. The other 2 are beneficial play and physical activity. And then there are 2 others that are more general, related to nature and health and nature and academic outcomes across a broader range of exposures than just green schoolyards. All of these infographics are available on our website, and the versions that you can download from our website also include references to all of the studies that we cite in the infographic, which hopefully builds credibility for this content. Our Research Digest was created about 2 years ago. It's a monthly publication that's sent to 25,000 individuals. The digest brings hot off the press research to everyone's mailboxes and provides links to our summaries. Several times a year, we're also producing what we're calling a special issue of the digest, which is content that's focused on a specific topic. And we're providing research across the last couple of years that illustrate the state of the research related to that topic. Those special issues of the digest are paired with a research-based webinar that we're calling the Making the Case webinar series. And in these webinars, we're presenting some high-level findings from the research. And then we're also exploring ways that research and practice are, or in some cases are not, informing each other, a process that we're calling ground truthing. So the first one we did this past winter was focused on equitable access to nature, and we have another one coming up on July 19th that's focused on green schoolyards. And lastly, I just want to let folks know that Children in Nature Network has a biannual series of conferences with the odd number years, or rather the even number years, I'm sorry, being a leadership summit, and the even number years being our full international conference. The summit that we just had in Oakland in May did feature research, particularly focused on nature-based learning, and the international conference that we will have in 2019 will also have a research track. So that's another way to connect with CNNN's research. So Judy, I'm going to turn it back to you to introduce our next person.
Thank you, Cathy. That was fantastic. So many resources. And Cathy, you have just been so instrumental in making the library come to life and this partnership. It's just been really fantastic. So thank you so much. And before we open it up to questions and do the final pieces of this webinar, I want to give Ginger Potter a chance to say a few words. Ginger is the Senior EE Specialist at EPA, our wonderful program officer for EE360, and she has been a long-term supporter of making environmental education research more accessible. And I wanted her to have a chance to say a few words about why all this matters from her perspective and why this is so good for EE360.
Thanks, Judy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Research has been a very important part of my life, probably since I was a research chemist for a few years before I got into environmental education. I work in an agency whose mission is to protect human health and the environment. And the focus of much of our work is regulation and enforcement. Most of the people here are either scientists or lawyers. And those folks are inherently skeptical if you can't provide data and the research to show that what you're talking about works. So it's all about being able to show research to skeptics in the agency when I'm trying to get them to understand that environmental education is a tool in our toolbox. It's as important as regulation and enforcement, and in many ways is more important than regulation and enforcement, because we've done such a good job of regulating and enforcing that we need to start looking at things like environmental education and outreach and information programs and voluntary compliance programs. So the ability to go to one place to find what kind of research is out there, to be able to answer the questions that people ask me about, well, how do I know that environmental education works? How do I know it's going to help me with my mission to protect human health and the environment, to make sure that we have clean air and clean water and safe food? So it is a pleasure to work with folks who believe that environmental education and research is as important as it is to me to be able to support the work that is ongoing. So I'm hoping that as we continue with this, and as the database increases, and hopefully increases with more and more research that's going on globally, that it will be a resource that everybody can go to see what's going on, who's doing what, and to really understand how important environmental education is and how it helps us achieve the mission of the agency of protecting human health and the environment.
Ginger, thank you so much. And again, thanks for your support. And through EE360, we're able to reach so many practitioners that are doing environmental ed, and this database library will really help on that. So before we close here, we have a number of questions, and please keep adding questions because we have time here for this wonderful panel to be able to answer some questions. I'll just put one out there. Karen asked about what kind of resources and ability are there to keep adding research items to the database. Is Pisces going to continue to support this? How are we going to handle maintenance and expansion? So that's an excellent question, Karen, and we're really happy to say that we do have support from Pisces and also support from EE360, that at least for the next couple of years, we are going to continue to add resources. And thanks to Charlotte and her team at Duke and to the Children in Nature Network, we will be continuing to get research flowing into the database and uploaded into the database, hopefully for the foreseeable future, so that we can continue this. Somebody else also asked, are you going to be including research from the past that is foundational for the field of environmental ed? And I can answer that on behalf of NAAEE and then turn it over to anybody from Children in Nature Network, of really trying to make sure that we do have as much research as possible that can help inform our practice, and that includes adding some additional resources from the past. And I think, Bill, you said we launched this with almost 1,000 summaries. We hope to just keep that growing and be able to add to the research that we have. But let me open it up to the panel if anybody has comments about either of those, keeping up the website or foundational research and adding to the database.
Well, Judy, on the Children in Nature Network research library side, we do have in our research library all of the summaries that were created back 10 years ago on up. We have, of course, more research to summarize now, and 20 per month keeps us very busy. But if there are things that people find in the peer-reviewed literature that you're not seeing in the Children in Nature Network library and you think they belong there as a seminal piece, please let me know, and we can review that for fit with our scope and get that summarized if it seems to be aligned.
Thanks, Cathy. Anybody else want to weigh in on the panelists? And again, we've never had so many panelists. I can't even see everybody at the same time. Just see if somebody's going to step up and say something. One other thing that came up again is a question from Tom about advice for advising environmental education researchers, how to be encouraging, what are the key questions to be asking. And I think anyone on the panel could answer that, from Louise to Charlotte to anybody. So advice for advising EE researchers and how to be encouraging, and what are the key questions to be asking. That's from Tom.
Well, I can jump in for a minute, and I know Cathy can add to this, but I would just say stay tuned to Frontiers in Psychology. It is doing a special issue on nature-based learning. That is a nature-based learning focus, but it includes a research agenda, and it's actually quite inclusive. We're defining nature-based learning very inclusively. And people put a couple years of work of different discussion groups, practitioners, funders, researchers, a research network, reviewing questions as they evolve, trying to identify some of the key questions that will be really significant for the field to pursue. And it's not all inclusive, but it's got a lot in there. So it's coming out very soon in Frontiers in Psychology.
Thanks, Louise. Charlotte?
Could I add one thing to follow up on what Louise just said? I just want to note that process of developing this research agenda for the field of nature-based learning really did tap into both NAAEE's constituents and Children in Nature Network's constituents in our process of sort of surveying the field in terms of what do practitioners need to know, what do we know from the research in these various fields. We really did pull together sort of our two spheres, and so it was another example of our collaborative efforts.
Thanks, Cathy. It has been great. And Charlotte, go ahead.
I wanted to mention that the Research Symposium each year has what I think is a pretty unusual focus, which is on work in progress. So as opposed to coming to a research symposium where you present things that are complete, we purposely ask people to come and present issues that they're having in their research, or ask for advice on particular methods or designs. And so in terms of being encouraging, if you go to the Research Symposium, you are hearing about the trials and tribulations and successes of not only novice researchers, but also very experienced researchers. So I'd mention that. The other thing I'll make a quick pitch for is that we are also working now on a resource to complement the research database, this one focused on resources for environmental education evaluation. And our particular interest is around collective measures across programs. We're working with Michaela Zint, and the developer of the website Mira, and we're very happy about that. And again, we're going to work with the formidable Bill Finnegan for his creativity and brain power to bring to this other new effort. And I posted a link, but if anyone on this call has a particular interest in environmental ed evaluation, and especially if you are now or have in the past worked across programs to collect data collaboratively, please email me at my email, which I put in the chat.
Thanks, Charlotte. I was actually going to ask you to talk about that, so thank you. Perfecto. Kristen, do you have any questions?
Sure. So this is a big question, but I think it's a good one. Let's see. Many barriers exist between researchers, funders, and practitioners that impede the flow of collaboration that could allow for more informed and meaningful work for all groups. What does each group need to know about the other to break down these walls and build partnerships?
Okay, big question. Anybody want to tackle that one of how can we get all our different silos to work together? The research symposium is one, in that we have a research symposium and we have a research strand in the full conference, and we try and bring researchers and practitioners together. The work that Jason's trying to do and Blue Sky is trying to do to break down barriers between funders and researchers. Anybody else want to jump in?
This is Cathy. I'll jump in quickly. I think that happens also at Children in Nature Network's conference in the research track, and having researchers and practitioners at both our summit and our full international conference. I'll also mention that something that has come up for a couple of years when we talk with folks at the CNN conference is the need to help researchers and practitioners and funders sort of find each other. And people were referring to this as Match.com, essentially, for researchers, funders, and practitioners. This actually became a really formalized idea at the CNN Summit in May, where a small group in the nature-based learning research action area met and came up with this idea, again, of creating essentially an online tool to help those folks find each other. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, but there's a team that's wanting to move that forward, and we'll be looking for funding to help make some sort of an online mechanism for that sort of matching process. That doesn't solve all of the problems, but at least it solves an early problem in terms of people just finding each other and finding people who are interested in the same thing they are.
Yeah, that's great. And I think both of our organizations are trying to figure that out, and we could use your help. So anybody that's online, how do you suggest that what can we do more, both at the national, the state, the international level, to link people up? So we've got a lot of ideas. We've got things like eePro, and as Cathy talked about, the work that's going on with naturematch.com, which is great. But anybody else want to jump in before we take maybe one more question? Okay. And one thing that I just want to mention that Bill mentioned in response to Brad, your question about communication, is that one of the journals we're featuring in the research bulletins is the Journal of Environmental Psychology, so there might be some overlap there, but Brad had asked about the importance of environmental education and communication, and some of the articles that are focused on the communication side, and I'm sure that's the same for the Children in Nature Network, that there might be some of those in there and that we might want to look at that. We've also looked, and I think I mentioned exploring other partnerships. We've talked with Informal Science about the work they do to collect a lot of evaluation data, but also some research, and are there partnerships that will allow us to broaden the tent so that people can find what they're looking for and we can make these matches, which is great. Kristen, any other questions? Are we all ready to close? Okay, and if there are any others that you have, we will answer them on eePro. But I do want to thank this team and just see if anyone has any final thoughts to leave us with before we do a couple of quick closing slides about upcoming webinars and other things. Any final thoughts from our amazing team here? Nope. Okay, somebody's got to have one final thought.
Just thank you for spending the time, and please do let us know how the tool is working for you. We're eager to hear how you're using it and what else you'd like to see. So thanks so much, and please tell your friends about it as well.
Thank you, Sarah. And Sai just posted a summary of initiatives that NAAEE and the Children in Nature Network are doing, and you can download that. And we also just posted a link to a survey about what you might want to see on webinars in the future, and we can share them with our partners at Children in Nature Network. This will be recorded and posted on EE Pro, so you can send this to your colleagues and let them know this tool exists and all these other initiatives that are taking place. And I just wanted to mention 2 exciting webinars from the NAAEE side that are coming up. One is we're going to hear from Dr. Bill Scott and Dr. Mark Stern. They both just published books, and they're going to talk about new thinking, and we'll have more on that. That is on July 24th. And then on August 21st, we're going to be focusing on behavior change in EE and thinking about that with Amiel Dewan. So both of those are going to be fantastic, and hope you can join us for that. And again, registration is open for our conference in October. It's in Spokane, and we really hope you can come. There's the 2-day research symposium that Charlotte talked about, and then the conference kicks off on Wednesday and goes through Saturday, and we just have some amazing people coming. So I hope to see many, many, many of you there. So thank you all for joining. Thanks to our panelists. Thanks to everyone who took the time today to be part of this webinar, and we hope to see you next month. Thank you so much. Take care.